This is basically Microsoft Word, and first of all, as I told you, we are going to look at the very basics, but only for a couple of minutes, since probably all of you know this. First of all, how Microsoft Word is built up. At the top, we have the quick access toolbar. The most important button here is probably the save button, and I really recommend you that you develop the habit of saving your document all 5 to 10 minutes, because the least thing you want is that you work on your thesis 2 to 3 hours on one day, or maybe even 6 or 7 hours. Then Microsoft Word or your computer crashes and you didn't save the document. Microsoft Word has some auto-saving functions, but you're always more secure if you save it regularly. And also for the thesis, I always recommend to you that you store the thesis on a place on your computer which is linked to for example, to a Google Drive folder. So in my case, all my documents are stored in a separate folder on my computer, and this folder is simultaneously always syncing all data with Google Drive, which means if my computer is dying for some reason, also if the hard drive is dying for some reason, I will always have access to my thesis. The next part is the ribbon. The ribbon contains various tabs, as you can see here, and these tabs contain various functions, and the functions are separated in groups. So here, for example, you have the font group, which means all the font settings are in here. Then further below, we have the editing area. In the editing area, you can see a sheet, which is basically the view, how it will look like when you print it. Up here, you also have the ruler. And by the way, I would always implement or activate this ruler. You can do this in the View tab. So up here you can see we have various tabs. The View tab contains all the functions for your view in Word. And here in the Show section, you can activate the ruler. We basically have been here in the editing area, and in the bottom we have the status bar. And the status bar simply contains some information, for example, the number of pages, the number of words. And the most important function you will probably use is the zooming function. So here you can zoom in or zoom out. Yeah, and that's it already. So this is it about how Microsoft Word is built up. Let's just implement some text here. There is a function which is called lorem and opening bracket, closing bracket, enter key, which will paste some dummy text. So I'm just doing this so I can show you some more functions here in Microsoft Word. The first thing we are going to look at are the font settings. So basically the font formatting. The font formatting can be applied to the smallest unit in a Word document, and the smallest unit is basically a character. So for example, we can just select one character with the mouse. This is the smallest unit, and here we can apply the font formatting functions. Of course, you can also select a whole word or also a whole paragraph or the whole page. This doesn't matter. Then in the Home tab, when we go to the font section, we have various settings here. We can change the font, for example, which is clear. We can also change the font size. And by the way, here you have, let's say, quick access buttons with which you can increase and decrease the font size easily without always having to select the font size in the drop-down. Then here we have the clear all formatting button. What this button is doing is, if you, for example, do some changes to the font or to the word here, and you don't like it, and you want it to go back to normal, so this is the normal formatting, then you simply highlight the part that you want to go back to normal, click on clear all formatting, and then it will again look like all the standard text. Here you also have font style options, bold, italic, underlined, which you probably all know. Here are a bit more functions, and then also background color and font color. And this is one important thing here. you have here functions for the font section, but these functions that you can see here are not, or usually not, all the functions that are available in Word. As you can see in the font sections, there is in the bottom right corner, there is this arrow, and when you click on that arrow, a dialog window is opening, and here you have additional options. And by the way, if you are changing your font style, do it always in here, because here you can test out various fonts together with the font style and the font size and also the color and all the other parts. And when you found a style that fits for you, then you can simply click on OK and it will be adapted. If you would do all of this up here, then you would have to change the font size. Maybe it would not look good, then go back to it, change the color, then maybe the styling, for example, make it bold, then maybe because of being bold, the font size is maybe too big, so you would make it smaller. So it's more complicated up here. Therefore, I recommend you, if you're searching for a new style, simply do all the settings here, do the searching here, and when you like it, then click on OK, and it will be implemented. By the way, here you have also various tabs. So when you go into the advanced tab, you have, for example, scaling options, which means the text is simply scaled in regards to the width. And you also have spacing options, so spacing between characters, which you can set to expanded, and then simply increase the spacing, and you can see this simply makes everything a bit wider. Okay, so let's go back here to normal again. Yeah. Now, I've told you the character is the smallest unit in a Word document. Now the next bigger thing is a word, and a lot of words together will be one paragraph, and you can usually recognize a paragraph since it is visually separated from other paragraphs. So as you can see here, there is a visual separation, which means this is the first paragraph, this is the second one, and here at the end, for example, it looks like this is also the next paragraph. How can you find this out? If you go into the paragraph section, in the top right corner, there is the Show Hide button. And when you click on it, the formatting symbols will be shown. And as you can see here, all spaces will be shown as a dot. And of course, this dot is not being printed. So even if you go to File and then to Print, as you can see here, all these formatting symbols will of course not be printed. So this is just for your orientation. And then you can see we have a new paragraph starting from here. Then here we have a new one, here we have a new one, and so on. So these are the paragraph symbols. Now, why am I telling you this? The reason for that is that all the paragraph functions can be applied to whole paragraphs. And now when you click into this paragraph, for example, you don't even have to highlight it. You simply click in it somewhere. Then you use one of these options, then the option will be implemented to this whole paragraph, but not to the following ones. You could, of course, select all of them and then apply the option, then it will be applied to all of these. But if you simply select one paragraph, then the option will only be applied to this one. Yeah. So as I've shown you already, here we have the alignment functions. Usually when you're writing a thesis, or very often it is the case that you would use the justified alignment, which means simply highlighting your text, clicking on justify, and then you can see the text will end on the right margin. So it starts on the right margin, it ends on the right margin. It simply looks a bit cleaner. You also have the bullet points option. When you click on it, the paragraph will be formed into a bullet point. And of course, you can also do the same with numbers. And here with these functions, you can see there is always this little drop down arrow to the right of the function. And there you can then do some detailed settings for your bullet points. So you can, for example, say you want a square. then there is a square as your bullet point. So to remove the bullet point, simply again click on this function. Then you also have the line spacing. So usually I think the line spacing for Thesis is between 1 and 1.5. So you can set this here. And again, we have this little arrow in the bottom right corner. So when you click on it, you will have a lot more line spacing options. So you can set single, you can set double, also 1.5, but you could also say you want multiple, type in 2, and multiple with 2 is basically the same as double. So here you could also say 2.1 or so. So that's it for the line spacing. And here you also have the options for spacing after a paragraph and before a paragraph, which means you can see this is the first paragraph, this is the second one. Currently we have 0 space after the first paragraph. So if we, for example, increase this to 10 points, click on OK, then we have 10 points spacing after the first paragraph, and here we have now the 2.1 line spacing. So if we would go back to 1.15 as it is usually, it would look like this. And here we have the 10 points spacing after the paragraph. Okay. So this was it for font formatting and paragraph formatting. Basically, the very basic functions in Word that you probably have already used, or at least some of them. The next part is now the so-called styles. The styles can be found in the Home tab, here where it says Styles. And this is now one of the most important things that I want to show you. And actually for this, I will open up a new document. So as you can see in this document, we have various headings and we have text in here. So this is a very simplified version of a thesis. Now it can be the case that at some point in your thesis, you are thinking, I don't like my heading style. Or maybe your professor has some rules in regards to the formatting and you didn't follow them in the beginning. So now you have to change them. So let's say maybe the heading currently has a size of 16 points and is bold. Now let's say your professor says it should be 18 points and italic. So bold and italic together. What you then would have to do is to select heading 1, also click on italic, put it to 18. Then go to heading 2, italic, 18. And do this for all the headings in your document. So this is one page, this is easy to do here. But if you have 40, 50, 60, maybe 100 pages in your thesis, then this takes a lot of time, especially if you also have to do this for all the content. And this is where the so-called styles come into play. The styles basically contain a set of formatting rules, and you can apply the set of formatting rules to various paragraphs. And you could also apply it to single words, but usually it is always applied to a paragraph. What this means is I can apply this heading 1 style to, for example, my heading 1. And even if I don't like this style now, it doesn't matter. So let me just show you how this works. I first of all apply the heading 1 style to all my level 1 headings. And usually I would do this already when I'm creating the document, so not afterwards. So at the end I have all my headings connected to this style. And since they are connected to the style, I can now simply change the formattings of the style, and all these formatting changes will be applied to all the connected paragraphs. So how to do this? You do a right click on the style you want to edit, click on modify, and here we could now say font size 18, bold, italic, the color black, click on OK, And this will be applied to all the connected paragraphs. And this is how you should format your thesis, so that you have a structure in there. And also for the paragraphs, the standard paragraph here, the normal text, also has a normal style. And by changing the normal style, you can change the basic look of your whole document. So if you say that you want your whole document to be in font size 12 at least, change it here, click on OK, and all the normal text in there from the standard paragraphs will be changed to the font size 12. You also have, for example, the emphasis and intense emphasis and strong style, which means you can, for example, in your document say that you have some words and they should stick out. And if you want them to stick out, you can, for example, say, I want them to stick out by making them bold. And now you do this in multiple spots in your document because you want the words to stick out, and afterwards you think, okay, maybe it would look better if all these words that are sticking out are in blue color. Then simply do a right click on strong, modify, blue color here, click on OK, and all of these will be in blue color. And this is also the important reason why you should use styles, because usually, especially inside the text, all or most of the people are simply highlighting the text and clicking on bold up here and doing this in all positions. But this is not, they will not be able to change all of these formattings at once. So this will be a lot of work if they afterwards decide to make the styling different. And the cool thing about the headings about the styles, but especially about the headings, is when you go to the View tab, here you can select the navigation pane, and in the navigation pane you can now see the whole structure of your document. So you will be able to see all of your level 1 headings and together with all of the sub-level headings. And then you can simply jump into the specific position of the document and you don't have to search for it. You simply click there and then you will move to subchapter 1. Of course, with one page, this is not a useful function, but when you have 100 pages, it is quite, it will be a lot easier to jump to the specific chapter that you want to edit. So again, we are in the document which contains a little bit of text, and when you want to implement objects, you go to the Insert tab, and there you will find various options. And the first option, or the first important option, especially for Thesis, is a table. So here in the table section, click on table, and then you have multiple options to insert a table. You could use the insert grid, where you will see the changes in real time. So you will see the columns and rows implemented in your document in real time. Then click on it and the table will be implemented. And of course you can also go to insert table here, and then set a specific number of columns, let's say 10, specific number of rows, 5, click on OK, and the table will be implemented. And as soon as you implement a table, you can see when you click in the table, there will be 2 new tabs called Table Design and Layout. As soon as you click out of the table, these 2 tabs are not there anymore. So these are table properties. So let's now first look at the table layout options. So 1 second, yeah. Now it works. So let's now look at the table layout options. First of all, you can of course always extend the table. So for example, you can say insert a line below, insert a line above, insert column to the left, to the right, and so on. You can also say highlight these 4 rows, click on delete rows, then highlight all of these columns. Again, click on delete and click on delete columns. And as you can see, when you delete columns or rows, the table is getting smaller and it is not extended to the full size of the page or to the margins. How can you change this? Simply click on this fourfold arrow in the top left corner, and then click on AutoFit, and here on AutoFit window, and then it will extend the table again from the left margin to the right margin. You also have the AutoFit contents option, which basically means, let me just show you. Let's delete a couple of columns. And first of all, delete a bit more. First of all, I will again use AutoFit window. Now we type in some text here. Text 1, text 2, text 3. When we now select the table, click on AutoFit contents, then the table will shrink to the minimum size needed to show the text correctly. But personally, I liked the fit window more. As you can see here, this is a good example. The columns are not balanced. This is also something you can change. Highlight the table, click on distribute columns, and then all the column width will be balanced. And the same also exists for rows. You can also change the height and the width of a column. And by the way, before I've shown you that you can auto-fit to contents. And as you can see, there's always a left and a right margin. So even though we have clicked on auto-fit contents, the line of the table is not directly next to the number 1. And this is due to the cell margins. So up here, there is a button cell margins. So again, select the whole table, click on cell margins, and there you can see we have a left margin of 0.19 centimeters and a right margin for 0.19 centimeters. And we can simply say 0, 0, click on OK. And now we really have the table lines directly at the number 1. So this is especially important when the space here gets smaller, then you don't want any additional empty space next to your words. Okay. The other options are simply just alignment options. So you can see when I make my table row a bit higher, the text is oriented in the top left corner. But I can also say I want to place it in the middle, of course. And yeah, these are the most important layout functions for a table. Let's now go to the table design. Here just one quick note. There you have various styling options for your table, which have a predefined style set, as you can see, which will then be applied to the table. And you could select one of these. But you can also create your own style. So you can say, for example, you want, let me just see, you want a border here. So let's just use a double line border. You want it with a thickness of 2¼ points, pen color, let's say make it orange. And as soon as you change something here, you can see that the border painter activates and your mouse cursor is now what's it called? It looks like a paintbrush. With this paintbrush, you can now click on various lines, and then the line will adapt the new style. Personally, I don't like the border painter. Why? Because when you sometimes click not correctly on the line, then it immediately exits, and then you have to activate it again. So this is not, you have to be extremely precise. Therefore, what I like to do is, if I, for example, want to apply the new line style to the whole top line, I simply select the first row, And here where it says borders, I click the drop-down menu and select the top border, because then from my selection, it will apply the style to all the lines at the top. And I could, for example, say select the whole table and only use the outside borders. And now you can see we have additionally the outside borders. So this is it, how you change the styling of a table. And by the way, also when you click on shading, here you also have, of course, the background color shading options. Yeah, so this is it about tables. Let's now look at images. When we go to insert, we have pictures here. And when we click on pictures, we can select this device and then a folder opens up, and here we can select it. But we can also simply drag and drop it in there. And as you can see, the picture is implemented quite big, so in its original resolution. And this is too big for me. So you can see there are these white circles in the corner and at the midpoints. And when you drag the corner points, you can simply make the picture bigger or smaller. When you drag one of the midpoints, you can also make it bigger, but it will distort the picture, so it will not keep the aspect ratio. And therefore, it makes sense to always use the corner points. Now, what else you will notice is when you drag the image, and let's say I want to put it up here in this area. So up there in the top right area. Now I drag the image. So I drag it up here, let go of the mouse button, and as you can see, it does not what I want it to do. The reason for that is the layout option. So when you select the image, there is this button for the layout options. When you click on it, there is the standard option which says in line with text, and it will always put the image in the line with the text. But most of the time you will not want this, since it doesn't look good, and therefore you have to simply select one of these other text wrapping options. Personally, for a thesis, I would always use the top and bottom option, because then you can simply put the image after a paragraph and before another paragraph, and the text will be sorted up here and down there. And for a resume, for a resume, for example, I would use the in front of text option, because in front of text means I can put it everywhere, and then I can also put it somewhere in the top of the document. There would usually not be text, so I can put it up here, and all the other text will not be influenced or distorted. Then some other option I want to show you. When you click on the image and select one of these text wrapping options, you will see this anchor, the blue anchor here. Now, what is the blue anchor doing? The blue anchor, or let me just show you an example. Let's say I put the cursor here. Or no, let me just show you some other options. Put it up here, the image. Yeah. So now currently the blue anchor is up here. And now when I move down the text, which is down here, nothing changes, only the text is moving. But it could be that this image belongs to that text. And in that case, the image should move together with this text. And therefore, I would put the anchor to this paragraph, because this means when this paragraph is moving downwards, then the anchored image is also moving with it. So I press the Enter key now, and now it works as I want it to work. So now the image is moving up and down with the paragraph below. All right, so that's about the image. Let's just look very quickly into the picture format tab. Here you have some adjustment or picture editing options, but note Microsoft Word is not a photo editing software, so it is not Photoshop or something. These are very basic options. You can work with them, but it will never replace a professional photo editing software. But for basic stuff, it might be enough. Up here we again have the text wrapping options, which we already looked at in these layout options. Then we also have the options for the arrangement, basically when you have multiple images. So let's just copy and paste it. When you have multiple images, you can select which one should be. I could, for example, say I want to send it into the back, so send to back, then this image is in front. We can also align the image, which is again, in my opinion, important for a thesis, because in a thesis I would, if I align it into the center, then I want it to be aligned correctly into the center. So I select the image, click on Align Center, and then it's in the exact center. And here you can also change the height and the width of the image, and you can also crop it. So this is it for the image. Let's now look at image captions. Especially when you're writing a thesis, you will always need a caption, not only for images, but also for tables. And the procedure is always the same. Do a right click on the object, click on Insert Caption, and then you first of all should select a label. So this is a label in German language. I could say figure, but I can also use a custom label. So I click on New Label. Let's say image, just as an example. Click on OK. Then up here it will always say image and then the number. And Word is always automatically numbering the image. After the automatic number, I can then type my text. So image description, yeah, looks good. And here when I click on numbering, I could, for example, also include the chapter numbers from the heading 1 style, for example. So when I click on OK, yeah, we actually don't have implemented any chapter headings here, so I'm getting this error message or information message. So let's just deactivate the chapter number. Now when I click on OK, you can see the caption is placed at the top of the image. This is actually not what I wanted. So again, do a right click, Insert Caption. So here, position, we select below selected item, simply due to the reason when you're working with images, it is a common standard to put the caption below the image, at least in Germany. Now I click on OK. And yeah, okay. It is again placed at the top probably for the reason, since we said we want to anchor the image to this paragraph, because now it won't allow to put any text in between. So let's just revert all of these changes. So insert caption, text, below selected image, click on OK. Now it implements below. And one important thing here, it might be the case that you want to move your image later on. And as you can see, when I move the image, this text here is not moving with it, because the text and the image are two separate objects. This here is an image. This is an additionally implemented text box. What you will need to do, and this only works if you selected in these layout options one of these 6 text wrapping options. If you have the standard option activated, this, what I'm going to show you now, will not work. So select one of these 6 options. What you have to do is click into this text. Then you will see the outside border. you're now in the editing mode since the cursor is blinking. So therefore you have to click on the border of the text box. So now you exited the editing mode and you selected the object. Then hold down the Control key on your keyboard and now click on the image. Then both of these objects are selected. Now do a right click on it, select group, then again group, and now this is one whole unit. One whole unit which consists of two objects, so I can still edit them separately. Okay, but now when I move this group here, it will always stick together. And if I would say now I want to change the text, simply click in here, then inside this group, the text box object is in the editing mode, and now I can simply change the text. Okay, so this is it for objects. Or this is it for images, not for objects, because we still have some other objects, but not a lot of them. So when we go into the Insert tab, you can see there are some more objects, but they are not so important for a thesis. So here you have shapes, which are basically some standard shapes. You also have icons. These icons can be quite interesting, especially if you're sometimes doing some, if you're creating, for example, company documents, then you might, for example, let's just check it out. You might want to use a phone icon for your phone number in such cases, but for a thesis, it is not so important. Then you also have smart arts, charts, and back here you have text boxes. So when you click on it, this text box will be implemented, and you can again change this to, for example, in front of text, and then you can place it somewhere in your document in a separate position. And these are some advanced options which you also probably don't need for the thesis. So this is it about objects. Okay, so as I told you before, we're now going to look at the formatting of whole pages. So whole pages formatting. Usually when you start a document, the first thing that you would do is that you go to, first of all, you would probably go to the View tab and set up the view so that it fits perfectly for you. So personally, I like to see only one page and not multiple pages. So just to show you what multiple pages looks like, the multiple pages view is pages side by side. I simply like it one page. Totally depends on you and how you want to work. I also like to work with a zoom in, and I also keep the ruler activated simply due to the fact, as you will see later on, that we can use some options in the ruler. Now up here you have the print layout, which is usually always the layout you want to use. You also, because you can see what the document will look like when it's being printed, and you can also edit it. You also have the read mode. So this is not so comfortable to use, at least not for me. So this is the first thing you would do, set up the view so that you can work comfortably. The second thing you would do is set up the layout. Usually in Germany, the size is always automatically set to A4, and since you're in Germany and you're creating German documents, A4 will fit. But it could be the case that you're, for example, later on you will work for an agency, and the agency has customers in the US, and the US has different page formats as a standard, and then you would have to set, for example, the letter size. This could also be the case. So make sure that your document is always the page size that you currently need. The next thing, the orientation. For a thesis, of course, it is portrait mode. But again, if you would work for a media editing agency, it could be that you have to create a brochure. A brochure could also be landscape view. So this could be the case. But for thesis, it is portrait. And then the margins. The margins are usually set to normal with 2.5 centimeters. For a thesis, you will have to later on change it, because usually on the left side, I think it is on the left side there, you have a bit bigger border, because it will be printed as a book, and then you will simply need more space on the left side, but we will look at this later on. And you also have the option here to set multiple columns. So again, for example, if you would want to create a brochure, it could be the case that this brochure should be written in 3 columns, like this. So this is only optional. So this is the very basic setup of a page. Now we also have other page formatting options, and one of the most important page formatting options is the header and footer area. The header area is basically the top part of the page which does not contain text, and the footer, of course, the bottom part. Now to activate them, simply do a double click in here in this empty part. Then the header area is opened. And there you can type in some text. And as you can see now in the ruler, and this is why I like to keep the ruler activated, there is this sign up here which looks like a mirrored L. And at the right page margin there is again a sign which looks also like a mirrored L, and these are so-called tab stops. So when I write a text here and click on the tab key on my keyboard, then the cursor is automatically moving to the next tab. And this tab here is actually a center tab, which means when I type text here, then the text will always be aligned. It will always have a center alignment relative to this tab stop. And now I can use this other tab stop by simply clicking again on the tab key on my keyboard, and this tab stop is a right tab. So when I write some text here, you can see it is always right aligned. And by the way, you can also drag and drop these tab stops and move their default position. Okay. The next thing up here, let's say now you have a company and you want to create a company document. And for this company document, you want to implement your logo in the header. What you would do is go to Insert Picture, select your logo. I will just use a icon as a dummy. So this is our company logo implemented here. And then I would set the text wrapping options to in front of text, so I can move it anywhere in the document. And I would place it up here, align it to the right margin, put it up there. And like this, I could implement an image in the header. And for example, for a thesis, I think there is the option to, at least on the cover page, if you're doing your thesis, for example, at a company, that you implement on your cover page the logo of the company up here, for example. But the basic, what I wanted to tell you is you can put text in here, you can also put an image in here, and this is usually always quite useful. Okay. Then we looked at the header. Now let's look at the footer area, because the footer area, as you probably know, is very often used for page numbers, and in your thesis you will also need page numbers. In Word you can implement automatic page numbers. So how is this done? when you click into the footer and go into the header and footer options in the tab up here, there is the page number button. When you click on the button, you have the option for bottom of page. So this fits for me. And then usually it depends a bit on how you want to implement it, but I personally prefer to implement the page number on the right side. So I simply click on this and the page number will be inserted here. Now it can be the case that in some parts of your document you want to use different page number formats. For that, go to page number, format page numbers, and then here you could, for example, select the Roman page number style. Okay, and you could also say, so not to start at number 1, but for example, maybe you want to print out your cover page, and then you need to start from position 2. So enter 2 in here, click on OK, and then we have the Roman number format, number 2. So this is it about the header and footer and about formatting a single page. Let's now look at the formatting of a whole document. Before we start with the thesis template, just one thing I want to show you. When I write some text in here, in the header area, then this header text will be on all pages. And when I change it on the third page to some other text, then this will change on all pages. So what you need to note here is the header and footer area by default are always connected. Now you have various options. The first option is that you say, I want a different first page. And this is usually used for a cover page, for example, because a cover page usually does not contain some header text and also not a page number. And therefore, we can say different first page. And now we can, usually you would leave out the header and footer on the first page, or you would use it for logos. But just to show you, this is the cover page. And now this text here is different from the text on all the other pages. So all the other pages have some other text sample. So that's the first option. The second option is that you have different odd and even pages. Where would you want to use this? For example, if you print your document and the pages, because always when you print pages you have two sides, and now you have to decide, do you want to print only the front side of a page and leave the back side empty? Like this you would waste the back side of the page. Or do you want to print the front side and the back side? I think for a thesis it is most common to let the back side be empty. But in the end this is up to you. And if you would want to also print the back side, then of course the page number needs to change. Because then on one side of the page it needs to be on the right side, and on the other side of the page it needs to be on the left side. And this is, for example, where different odd and even pages can be used, because then you can see the footer description immediately changes to odd page footer, and the next page is the even page. And here we could, for example, say the odd page should always have the number on the right side. The even page, there is no number implemented, so we set a page number, bottom of page, and now we do it on the left side. And then it always alternates from right to left, and so on. And this is the first page, which is different since we said different first page. Now we deactivate all of this, so make everything the same again, because the next thing I want to show you is how you can adapt this totally manually or individually by your needs. Because very often the different odd and even pages or the different first page option is not enough. When is it not enough? Let's just show you another example. I have the 3 pages here, and now I'm going to actually use the side-by-side view. I have 3 pages here, and now maybe I want this second page to have a landscape orientation. Now when I click on it, you can see Word is automatically putting everything in landscape orientation. So here we have the same thing with the header. It is putting, or it is applying the option to all the pages. And this is now the time where these breaks come into play. So under Layout, the Layout tab in the Page Setup section, click on Breaks. And now we basically have to tell Microsoft Word, if we want to put this page into landscape orientation, we have to let Word that right here, right before this page starts or at the end of that page, there needs to be a layout cut. And also at the end of this page, there needs to be a layout cut, because the first part should be portrait orientation. This here should be horizontal orientation, and here again, portrait orientation. So we need to implement a cut here, or basically on the page before. How are we doing this? We click at the end of the page before, go to breaks, and now not the normal page break, but the section break, which says next page. And now in the Home tab, I simply activate the paragraph symbols again. You can see when we activate them, there stands the, there we have the description for the page break, for the section break. Now I delete this empty paragraph up here. And when we now activate the header and footer area, you can see now that we have different sections. So through this section break, we implemented, or we now have a section 1, which goes from the start document to the section break. And after the section break, we have section 2. And this means we could now already turn the page orientation for the whole section 2, because this page is here section 2 and this also. So everything after the section break is a new section. When we now click into this page and go to Layout and then to Orientation, select Landscape, these 2 pages will be turned. But we only want the second page to be turned. So what we're going to do, we implement the next section break. So at the end of page 2, we click here, go to Break, select Next Page, again delete the empty paragraph up here. And now again, when we activate the header and footer area, you can see now, here we have section 1, since it goes to from the start to the section break. Then here starts section 2, and it goes from the start of, or from the end of section 1 to the next section break. So this is section 2, and after section 2, so after this section break, starts section 3. And now we can apply changes to each section separately, which means we can now say page 2, layout, orientation, make a landscape orientation. And now the content of page 2, it stretches a bit out because here we have different margin options. So we actually created 2 pages out of 1 page, but the first page is portrait orientation, the next page is the horizontal orientation, and the last page is again portrait orientation. And this is also the way how you would achieve different contents in the header and footer area. So if we would want to say in the header up here, we want different contents in each section, then let me show you a sample. Let's say we remove the word here. then you can see it still affects all the other sections. And this is due to one thing. It is due to the fact that the sections are still linked with this button. So you would have to say, deactivate the link to previous. Now this section and this section are unlinked. Now we do this also for that section here. Unlink it from previous. And now every section is separate in the header area. In the footer area you have to do the same again. So also unlink it. And then you could do custom content 2. Here we have custom content 1. And here we have custom what's going on? Content 3. All right. So this is it, how you have custom contents in various sections in the header and the footer. And yeah, that's the importance of this page break option here. And by the way, this page break, so this is the section break, this page break option is simply to put the text onto a next page, but it will still be the same section. So this is just doing something visually, and the section break is really separating the document structure. Please follow along. So I'm creating a new document, completely fresh document. So you should also open up a new document and always try to follow along. So as we have learned before, first thing we are doing when creating a new document is that we set up the layout. And for that, let me just pull up a document very quickly. So I have some thesis specifications which are in German, but it will still be okay. I will translate the necessary parts. So here, for example, this is a thesis requirements or thesis specification sheet, and it says margins left side 3 centimeters and right side 2 centimeters. So that's the first thing we would start with. We go into the layout tab, go to margins, click on custom margins, and we had left 3, right 2. So left 3 centimeters, right is 2 centimeters. Click on OK, and now the margin is already set. Okay. Then the next thing is this is line spacing 1 to 1.5. So we go to the Home tab, and now for all our standard text, so therefore we modify the normal style. We want to change the line spacing. So right click on the normal style, modify, and here on Format Paragraph, we can now change the line spacing, and there we could, for example, set it now to 1.5. Click on OK, again on OK, and now our standard line spacing for the document is 1.5. And the font size should be between 11 and 12. So let's also change this. Right click on normal, modify, font size 12. Okay. So now we have basically set up everything so we can start. You could also change your font, the font. But Calibri is one of the standard fonts. Of course, you could change it to Arial, for example, but this is totally up to you. I will just leave it like this for now. The next thing we're going to do is that we're going to implement what's it called, the headings, the table of content. Therefore, I will again pull up a document so that you can see a sample structure. Okay, so this is a sample structure of a document. Now, since I don't have the chat option where I could copy and paste this for you, we simply have to type this down. Yeah, so let's just type it down. Preface, then, or let me put it side to side. We first of all have preface, then list of figures, list of tables, list of abbreviations. Then the next thing is chapter 1, which is introduction. And by the way, these are only dummy headings, but it doesn't matter because we're preparing the document, and of course afterwards you can extend your document, you can change the headings, but for now simply implement the dummy headings. Or if you already know your headings, you can of course implement your real headings. Then second chapter is, it is the first dummy chapter. Then we have 2.1, first subchapter, 2.2, second subchapter, 3 is second chapter, 3.1 is the first subchapter, 3.2 second subchapter, 4 is conclusion. Then we have the list of references and the appendix. So I will give you a couple of more seconds for typing this down. Just for you to know, this is a sample structure. It does not mean that this is always right. Therefore, go to your professor and discuss with him or her if this structure is okay for them. Now, the next thing we have to do is to implement the heading styles. Since most of these paragraphs are heading 1, we simply select all of them, and up here, let me just make this full screen again, and in the styles section simply apply heading 1 to them. Okay, and of course for the subchapters we will now apply heading 2, so subchapter heading 2, subchapter heading 2, and again heading 2. And this is already our structure. In the View tab, we can of course also activate the navigation pane, and here we can now better see that the subchapter that there is really a heading 2 style applied to it, since it is indented compared to the first chapter. The next thing we're doing is to implement an automatic numbering, and there Microsoft Word has a very cool function. In the Paragraph tab, there is this button called Multi-Level List, and when you click on it, you will have this list here. And the list, what it is doing is, it basically goes through your document and searches for all headings which have, or it searches for all paragraphs which have the heading styles attached to it. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and so on. And since these styles are attached to it, it will automatically know how to number it, because the first heading 1 will be the number 1. The first subheading will have number 1.1. So when we click on this, all of these headings will be numbered automatically. And usually the numbering starts with the introduction. So here we now have to highlight the first 4 headings. Then in the paragraph section, we simply click on the numbering to deactivate it. And also for the chapters after conclusion, they don't have a numbering, so deactivate it. And here, our manual numbering, we can simply delete it now because this is not needed. Word is doing this automatically for us. The next thing we are doing is the following. usually when you have a level 1 heading style, you would want this heading to start at a new page. This means the first chapter here, for example, would start on a new page. This chapter 2 here would start on a new page. Chapter 3 would start on a new page, chapter 4, and so on. And we can implement this by modifying the heading 1 style. So we do a right click, click on modify. And we're now telling Word that every heading 1 style should be placed on a new page. And this is a paragraph formatting option. So we have to go to Format, then to Paragraph. And here in the second tab, Line and Page Breaks, we have the option to, here it is, Page Break Before. So basically, to implement a page break before the heading starts. Click on OK, again on OK, and now you can see all the heading 1s will start on a new page. So we've already separated all the headings, and the subchapter headings, they are staying on the page of their parent heading. This is okay. You could also say that your subchapters should start on a new page, but I think this is done very rarely. Maybe if your subchapters are quite long, then this might be the case, but I don't think that this is necessary. Okay. So now our structure or our document is already getting bigger. Our structure is getting clearer. The next thing we are doing, so basically we've already set up all the structure for our document, because now you can change all the headings. You can add additional headings. You can enter text in your various chapters. So the basic structure of your document is fully finished. But the only thing we want to implement more to make this more, to make it look more professional, is the following. We do a double click into the top of the page, and here we will implement a so-called quick part. So in the header and footer tab, click on quick part and select field. And now what we are doing is that we implement a field with the name style ref. And here when we select style ref, we then select heading 1. And what is this? What does this mean? We will implement a field which will put a reference to our heading 1, to our level 1 headings. Now when we click on OK, you will see what this actually means. Okay, this is a weird error here. So let's look on page 2. I will check this later. Let's look on page 2. The style reference means Word is looking for the heading style 1 on this page, taking the content, putting it into the quick part. Okay, and this is real-time changing. So when I change the text here, it changes also up here in the header. So that is quite cool. Now, let me check why this is. Something is not working properly here. I'm not sure why. So it seems to be just a visual error, because usually when you go to File and Print, you can see it works as normal. And now what we're going to do is go into the header, press the Tab key 2 times to align it to the right side. And to make a visual separation from the content, we go to the Home tab, and in the Paragraph section, we click on Borders, and there we select the bottom border. And I can see I still have the ugly orange line. Therefore, I will first of all, so when you select bottom border, you will usually get a nice thin black line, which is good. As you can see in my example, I have this orange double line, which we created earlier. So I will just put it back to normal by selecting black thin with probably 1.5 points. Click on OK. Now I can select bottom, and it will be implemented like this. Okay, I really have, yeah, okay, this is a zooming error. So let's just work on a single page mode again. Yeah, so as you can see, I have some visual errors here. I don't know why this is happening. Maybe this is due to some computer resources. We will now first of all implement the table of contents. So after the preface and before the list of figures, there is usually the table of contents, which means we click at the end of the word preface, press the enter key, and then we are in a new line. And here we now go to, where is it? References. And in the reference table, in the references tab, there is the table of contents section. And here we click on table of contents. And then we can basically select one of the two. They are only different in the heading. The one has the heading contents and the other one has the heading table of contents. So in my case, I'll just use table of contents. And this is now, let me check, yeah. This is now on the same page and not moving onto the next page, which is, yeah. So we should basically highlight again the heading, go to paragraph, and again select page break before, and then also for the table of contents there will be inserted a page break and it will be on the next page separately. And as you can see, this table of contents contains all of our headings. So this is again a bonus why you should use heading 1, 2, and 3 styles and so on, because then you can create a table of contents automatically. Now I have to tell you this is not changing live. So when you change something here, let's say you remove the word figures, you can see it is not being changed here. So you have to update it manually. You click in here and up there is the button update table, update entire table, okay, and then the change will be visible. So I recommend you, when you implement the table of contents, you don't need to update it every time you change your heading. Simply at the end, when you're working on your thesis, let's say you're working 5-6 hours on it, then you want to close it. Before closing it, maybe update the table of contents so that everything is fresh again, but you don't have to do this after each change. So I will write down the correct word again. All right. Then just to show you the table or the list of figures. List of figures. I will just implement some icons again. First icon and second icon. So let's say these icons are images. Again, we would change the text wrapping option, and usually in a thesis you would give them a caption. So here label would be figure 1, sample text below selected item, okay. Then group it together and do the same for figure 2. Sample text, okay, group it together. And now we already have implemented 2 figures. Let's just move this down a bit. Now we've already implemented 2 figures, which means now we can implement a table of figures or a list of figures. So how is this done? We first of all click on the position where we want to implement it. Then we go to the References tab, and here we click on Insert Table of Figures. And there you will now have to select the label that you used for these figures. And as you can remember, we used the figure label, and only if we select this label here, Word will be able to create a list for us. And you can basically create a list for all of the different labels. And this is the reason why this function is the same for the tables, because the tables also have such captions. But for tables, you would use the caption label table, for example. And this is how you can separate the various lists. So the list of figures, the list of tables, and so on. So in our case, we have the labels figure. Now when we click on OK, then Word will automatically create a list of figures for us with the label figure. Okay. And by the way, just one hint. Let me show you this. Or how would I show you? Yeah, I know how to show you. One more hint. You can see figure number 1, figure number 2. This is automatic numbering. Now what happens if these are nearly on the same spot, and this anchor, the anchor from figure number 2, is above the anchor, can I do this? Yeah, is above the anchor of figure number 1. So figure number 2 has the anchor up here, figure number 1 has the anchor down here. What this will do, when I do a right click on this automatic numbering and click on update, you can see that the numbering is wrong. So the numbering always orients on these anchors. So make sure when you have multiple images next to each other or beneath each other, that the anchors are set properly, because otherwise the numbering will be wrong and this simply doesn't look good. So put this anchor downwards and this anchor upwards. Then you can update the fields again and everything will be fine. Okay. So this is it for the list of tables. Just very quickly some hints on footnotes and endnotes, since you might have to use them when you are writing some text and you want to place a footnote at the position of this text. In the References tab, click on Insert Footnote, and this will implement a number here, a number in the footer, and also a line. And then you can explain what you wanted to explain here. And you can also implement endnotes. So let me just delete this. Yeah, you can implement endnotes. So in the References tab, click on Insert Endnote, and this will create a note at the end of your document. So this might not be the most useful for a thesis. Therefore, I think the footnote is the more important function for you. Let me delete this again. The next thing, which will be important for a thesis, is the automatic creation of a list of references. When you're citing something from a book, you will have to implement a citation. So how can a citation be implemented? Let's say we wrote a citation here, and now we have to implement a reference. For that, we go to the References tab, and here you can already see it says Insert Citation. Here we click on Add New Source, and then we can select the type of source. Usually it is a book, but it can also be, for example, a website. But I will use the book for this example. There you can write down the author, but you can also click on edit. Then you have the option to implement the last name, the first name, click on add, and then it will be added like this. Here we have the title, the year, city, and so on. Let's just write down publisher also. And when you click on show all bibliography fields, you will have a lot more which you can fill out. Now when you click on OK, there will be implemented a reference, and the style of this reference depends on what style you selected here. One of the common styles is, for example, the Harvard style. So Harvard style is last name, comma, year. And you can change this again as you wish. Now, at the end of the document in our list of references, we will be implementing the automatic list of references. So we go to references, citations, and bibliography section. Click on bibliography, here again on bibliography, and then it will be implemented. And as you can see, this bibliography is actually already coming with a heading and a numbering. So we remove the numbering, and now we actually don't need our list of references heading here. We can remove that. And then we already have our automatic bibliography, and note that this will change also when you change the style here. So this always depends on what you are selecting here. So AP style is, for example, also a known one. Okay, and I think this is it for the whole thesis template that you will need. And by the way, one thing I didn't show you guys is that these table of content entries also have styles. So if you, for example, wonder how you can customize the table of contents, of course you can also do this in the references tab, so that you say custom table of contents and do something here. But the styling of these entries will be done with the following. In the style section, open up the arrow in the bottom right corner, and there we make it a bit bigger. There is the TOC1 style, table of contents 1. Now we can modify it, make it bold, click on OK. Let's say, and let's say table of contents 2 style is italic. OK, and then you can see we applied a completely new style. So we made the table of content 1 entries bold, and the table of content 2 entries are italic. So this is how you can customize the styles of the table of contents. By the way, just information for you all, when you're writing a thesis, you will work with multiple books usually. And these books, you will use them probably in multiple spots in your documents. So you will have to reference one book multiple times. And therefore, as soon as you add a new source here, the source will be available up here in the selection. So you don't have to always edit newly, simply click on it and it will be inserted. Just to finish up what we started, let's implement the page numbers, because this is actually important. So at the bottom, in the footer, we go to header and footer, click on page number, bottom of page, and on the right side. And then the page number will be entered, and you can see Word is automatically always entering a new empty paragraph. So I'm just deleting this one. Now, it is common practice that before the introduction chapter, so all the chapters before, that these chapters have Roman page numbers. Okay, and all the chapters after introduction have the standard Arabic page numbers, which means, as you've learned before, when we want to change contents in the header or the footer, we have to split the document in different sections. This means we will have to implement a section break between list of abbreviations and chapter 1 introduction. So let's do this. Go to the end of list of abbreviations. So that's the page here. And at the end of list of abbreviations, so I typed on enter 2 times, and here we go to layout, break, and then next page. And now we implemented a page break. And here we have an empty paragraph, so we delete it with the delete key on the keyboard. And now the introduction is on the right page. This means when we do a double click into the footer now, you can see we have section 2, which starts with the chapter introduction, and everything before is section 1. Now we have to go to section 2 and tell section 2 to not link it to previous. So don't link it to previous, which means we've now unlinked the footer of section 1 and section 2, and now we can change the page number style for section 1. Therefore we go to page number, format page number, and for the number format we select the Roman number. Click on OK, and now you can see Roman number 1, Roman number 2, Roman number 3, 4, 5, 6, and on introduction it goes on with Arabic number 7, but when it starts with introduction we want to start with number 1 here. So restart the numbering, and therefore we go again to page number, format page numbers, and then start at number 1. Click on OK. And this is how you implement page numbers differently. So until here it's Roman page numbers, from introduction and onwards it's Arabic page numbers.